Black Osama and the Terror Side Effect is now available on Amazon. Link in description. What's up, everybody? It's your boy again, the Unabonger. And today I'm bringing you my review of Captain America: The End by Erik Larsen. This is basically a what-if of the last days of Captain America, kind of his last battle, that sort of thing. A little bit Dark Knight Returns. We start out with Captain America basically getting attacked by an army of Red Skulls. We don't know why, we don't know how, but there is kind of some sort of virus, some sort of sickness that is making everybody a Red Skull, kind of a zombie. And they're all attacking basically every human left and attacking Captain America, who is one of the last humans left. We get a couple of pages here, a splash page, a double page spread. We get some fighting of Cap and the Red Skulls, and then he gets knocked down a shaft and he falls into some sort of pit, some sort of underground cavern sort of thing, a bombed out building, and he stumbles across a band of humans that are still alive and still human. They kind of talk, and we have some exposition about what's happened to the world. And then the Red Skulls find him again and start attacking, and we have another fight scene. And some of these humans get turned into Red Skulls, and some of them get wounded. And it's at this point that it's revealed that Cap has O-negative blood, and he's a universal donor. And he gives a transfusion to this girl who's been shot, but they still need more medical supplies, so they venture out from this little hidden spot, and they stumble across a downed SHIELD helicarrier, and inside Cap discovers a MODOK that has been taken over by this Red Skull virus. A Red Skull MODOK, I suppose. And a fight scene ensues, and Cap smashes his shield into this Red Skull MODOK's face, and everything blows up. But the Red Skull army zombies, they are still there, and they are still relentlessly attacking. And Cap, man, he's just had it. He's about ready to hang it all up and say fuck it. Until this little girl that he saved with his blood transfusion, she says, "Oh, Cap, come on, I don't want to die. Please, just give it one more shot for me." And this is the thing that makes Cap have a second wind, and he starts kicking ass on these Red Skull zombies again. And his buddy Abe that he met a couple pages before, he's back, and he's not a Red Skull anymore, and he's got his shield. And then we have this little scene of Abe explaining how Cap's blood, because it had that super soldier serum in it, it can change people back from a Red Skull to back to human again. And then that's basically it, and then we kind of wrap it up with the humans coming back and getting these Red Skulls under control and changed back to human. The review overall, at this part of it, I'm gonna give it an 8 overall. I've definitely seen better artwork from Erik Larsen, but at this point in his career, this is kind of what you expect from him. It is what it is. I mean, it's 20, 22 pages, whatever, of art and story. Could have been better. Probably could have been worse too. I'd basically call it a sloppy Kirby. There's definitely some parts that are better than others. There's definitely some pages where it's like, hey man, I got a deadline fucking looming. I gotta churn this shit out. The coloring, I'll be honest, kind of what passes as modern coloring anymore is, as far as I'm concerned, not the best for Larsen's artwork, because it can really just muddy a lot of things. We've kind of got to realize that at this point, Larsen's artwork, what he turns in, hey man, it is what it is, but it doesn't really work well with the modern coloring. That's my biggest kind of problem with this comic, but once again, it is what it is. Now, this review is going to kind of turn into something else at this point. One of the gripes that I have about this story is that towards the end of it, we've got the revelation. Basically, what this story is really hanging on is this revelation that Cap's blood is what saves people from being a Red Skull and turns them back into human. Which, I mean, I guess it's alright, but is it blowing anybody's skirt up? Well, it's not blowing my skirt up. Especially because I have seen Larsen use this particular trope in his own work for decades now in Savage Dragon, repeatedly, over and over again. And I'll give him credit, it usually doesn't work out this well where it saves people. In Savage Dragon, usually what happens is the person receiving the blood, their body eventually rejects the blood from Savage Dragon, and they end up just exploding. I don't know what that whole obsession is with Larsen. I don't know. It's kind of one of those things that really just makes me scratch my head. I'm going to talk about Erik Larsen at this point because this video kind of lends itself to that. I used to be a huge Erik Larsen fan. He kind of came to prominence in the early 90s along with Todd McFarlane on Spider-Man. Then both of those two artists, along with some others, left Marvel and formed their own comic book company called Image Comics. And Erik created a lot of books, and the biggest one being Savage Dragon, which is still going to this day, even though honestly I think he kind of ran out of steam on it probably about 3 or 4 years back. I was still buying it. A couple years back, I think approximately 2 now, basically I really stopped buying it because, number one, his kind of online rhetoric, his online political rhetoric on Twitter specifically, it's so over the fucking top, anti-Trump, he's an orange man bad sort of guy. It's always just this unrelenting retweet of bullshit, and then also just this unrelenting parroting of that same bullshit from him. That was a big one where I'm just like, I don't know if I want to give this guy any of my money anymore. It also basically got answered for me at a point where he basically drew CP into his comic book, Savage Dragon. This isn't something I really want to talk about and dwell on, but I must admit, I used to be a huge Erik Larsen fan. I used to buy basically everything his name was on, anything he had to do with, and I still do, obviously. However, when you're putting what can be interpreted as CP in your comic, it made me want to take everything that I own of his out back and light it on fire. Meanwhile, that is literally hundreds of comic books, and unfortunately, the monetary value of that, I just can't really do. Plus the nostalgia of it, I guess. Plus, it would be one big damn fire. It would be a problem. And plus, also, here's another aspect of it. I actually own a couple original pages of Larsen's work. Ultimately, what I'm really hoping is basically over time, I kind of care a little less and less about him putting CP in Savage Dragon, and basically I'll end up kind of filling in gaps as time goes on. Now, here's another real problem I have with this comic, and with a lot of reviews that I've heard of this comic. I can't say that I've heard them all on YouTube, but for the most part, this comic is fairly well received. And by that I mean everybody's kind of like, well, that's how Erik Larsen draws anymore, so that's one thing. Otherwise, it's like, well, everybody knows him as a super far lefty now, so that this wasn't super in your face, super lefty style about Orange Man bad. At least that's okay, right? And that's one way of putting it. However, this comic, Captain America in general, if you look back at the history of comic books and the evolution of comic books and how they started, and really who started that industry and who has control of that industry, you're going to eventually come to the revelation, like I have, that all comic books are ultimately propaganda. Now, I know that's a pretty bold political statement, and ultimately, comic books are a medium, and they don't have to be propaganda. However, I may do a video on this someday, I may not, I may just leave it at this, I don't know. But ultimately, what Captain America is propaganda, and this comic book, while subtle, what this comic book is propaganda. And there's a part of me, and I may end up doing this on Twitter. I don't know if it'll work out or not. I may end up maybe asking Erik Larsen some more questions about the story, certain story elements. But hey, listen, this is propaganda, and I'm going to point out where and why it is. This should almost be a episode of Propaganda Autopsy, but here we are. I'm just going to do this now. One of the things that I want to point out in here is when Captain America kind of does his initial fight with the Red Skull, and he falls down this tunnel and he finds this surviving squad of people. Let's take a look at this surviving squad of people. It looks like we have got 3 Asian people, a chubbier boy and 2 girls, 2 black people, a boy and a girl, and a man with a beard and these beady little glasses. So that's one thing I kind of want to point out already. This is what is left of America in the future. This is what is representative of America according to Erik Larsen and Marvel Comics. And that's fine. I'm just pointing this out at this point, and I'm going to say, yeah, this isn't too over, this isn't too in your face yet. But like most propaganda, it's all these little things that kind of add up to a particular narrative. See, in stories throughout the years, what really makes them is this kind of sprinkling in of details along the way. And to eagle-eyed readers who are paying attention, the sprinkling of details, hopefully by the end of the book, by the end of the story, whatever, will basically form a puzzle. And that puzzle will hopefully reveal itself to these readers after a while. And it's usually kind of the gist of the story, and or kind of another point it really wants to get across. Again, I must admit the propaganda going on here is pretty subtle until about halfway through the comic when Abe, he goes to get this medical kit off of a downed Red Skull, and he comes to and yells, "Keep your filthy hands off me, your kind doesn't deserve assimilation, you deserve only bwang," and then he gets hit in the face by a shield by Captain America. And now, I guess this is a callback to Captain America's origins, being a mouthpiece against the Nazis in World War II. But sometimes you want to tell these people, hey man, how long ago was this? 60, 70 years? Why don't you build a fucking bridge? You know? Another little cute one we've got to throw in here is, oy vey. Huh, that's kind of a unique phrase, isn't it? Again, just another little sprinkling on. Once Cap goes in the helicarrier, right before he goes in, he's kind of telling Abe, hey, listen, do this, do that, the other. And then he has this thought, oh, geez, I keep forgetting that everybody's not a soldier in the army. Abe Jacobs is a good man. I shouldn't yell at him like he was a foot soldier at my command. Again, this is kind of where it's really building on me, and I'm really getting it. I'm really getting what you keep throwing at me repeatedly. All this bullshit. Again, these things are kind of subtle, and maybe I'm reading into it, maybe not. However, it is undeniable that they are there. We go a little bit further into this, and you probably got maybe from my initial review, my description of the story, I didn't like this aspect of it as much because this is where the propaganda really fucking kicks in. So, Captain America, the comic book character, that has endured for 60, 70 years, whatever the fuck it is now. We've got his last final battle, and right towards the end of it, he just says, "Ah, fuck it, I give up. You know what? Everyone else is right. I guess I'm not fighting for anything anymore. I'm fighting against everybody, right?" And then the really part of this happens when the girl has to basically remind Captain America of what he's all about and talk him into being a motherfucking superhero again. Here's the real propaganda of this, the way I'm reading it. This white guy finally says, hey, everybody's against me. Oh God, I get it. I'm the problem now. I have been educated. I finally get it. I finally get it from your perspective. And it is only this based girl saying, no, Captain, save me, that he changes his fucking mind and goes back to his original ideas and thoughts and says, oh yeah, I guess I am right. Thanks for letting me know, based girl. It's only then, after a girl reaffirms that what he's doing is actually right, that he's okay with fighting these Red Skulls. Again, I know it's supposedly kind of subtle. On its own, it's supposedly nothing. However, we've got to remember again that basically all these comics, and Captain America in particular, if you look at the origins of Captain America being created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, if we look back at all that, and if we look at what Captain America actually is, Captain America is propaganda. Captain America was created to get the United States into the fucking war with Germany. Captain America was created to vilify Hitler and the Nazis. And ultimately, this comic book is just continuing on in that tradition, however subtly you supposedly think it really is. When I was a kid, what really got me into reading quite a bit was comic books. However, as I've gotten older, I've realized that ultimately comic books are propaganda for children. Can comic books tell a complex story? Yes, they can. However, for a visual medium, that's not what is always needed, and sometimes a book is actually something that's going to convey bigger ideas in a better way. Sometimes you hit a certain age where you're not as thrilled by seeing pictures of people punching each other in the face anymore. You know what I'm saying? I've kind of gotten to a point where comic books aren't necessarily the medium to get across the ideas that I'm really interested in reading about or writing about. Again, you can only see somebody punch somebody in the face so many times. This is probably going to be a gradual sort of thing. And what I want to do over time is, instead of reviewing Comicsgate books, instead of reviewing comic books, what I kind of want to move towards more to showcase is moving from comic books about superheroes punching each other in the face to comic books about science fiction tropes and that sort of thing, to ultimately including and focusing more on science fiction books. Comic books have been a big part of my life and entertainment and reading interests for a long time, but frankly, the older I get, the less interested I am in them, and I don't really want to put a lot of focus and attention and work into something that I'm not really that interested in myself anymore. But anyway, that's all I got for you this time, guys. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below. Check out the official Twitter and Instagram accounts of Humane Garbage at Humane Garbage. And as always, remember to hit the pipe harder than you hit your wife and kids.
In a dystopian future where our elected leaders are liars, everyone is a clone after the devastation of the war, and all the continents of the world have conglomerated into one nation called Numerica. President Barack Obama has illegally enacted the terror side effect to maintain power and preserve the status quo through fear and ignorance. From the word terrorism, the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in the pursuit of political aims, and the suffix side, the act of killing, the terror side effect is a top-secret government mind control program designed to turn the average person into a public shooter, killing everyone they can for no apparent reason and then themselves, leaving the rest of society afraid of each other and apathetic to their rights being revoked by the government for safety, because it's the easiest way to control everyone. Barack Obama in the Terror Side Effect is a political science fiction novel that asks its characters and readers, how much control do you really have? Now available at all major ebook retailers.